Yogi Berra sends one into the right field stand for his 5th World Series home run.
10 World Series rings. Let that sink in for a moment. 10. Not 1, not 2, but 10 championship rings earned as a player. In the modern era of baseball, many Hall of Fame players never even see a single World Series. Some of the greatest players who ever lived, Ted Williams, Tony Gwynn, Ernie Banks, never got to taste champagne in October. But one man, a squat catcher from St. Louis who quit school in 8th grade, somehow found himself in the middle of the greatest dynasty in sports history, winning championship after championship after championship. Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra, a name that carries more weight in the hearts of fans than perhaps any other in baseball history. We remember the malapropisms, the seemingly confused wisdom, the impossible statistics, and that iconic leap into Don Larsen's arms. But here's what might shock you. Those 10 rings as a player, that's not even the full story. When you count his time as a coach and manager, Yogi Berra appeared in 21 World Series and walked away with 13 championship rings. 21 World Series appearances. But as legend melds into myth over the years, we can lose sight of what this man truly accomplished. The absolutely staggering numbers that seem almost fictional. We may remember the Yogiisms and the cultural impact, but we find ourselves forgetting the incredible journey of how an Italian immigrant's son became the backbone of the greatest dynasty in American sports history. Well, now it's time to step right up to the plate and witness the glory of baseball's most impossible champion. This is the story of Yogi Berra.
A high drive, that's trouble. It's an even-up ball game.
When Lorenzo Pietro Berra was born on May 12, 1925, in St. Louis, Missouri, there was little indication that this son of Italian immigrants would become one of the most famous athletes in American history. The Hill. That's what they called the tight-knit Italian neighborhood where the Berra family lived. It was a place where survival often meant sacrifice, where kids left school early to help put food on a table, where the American dream seemed more like a distant fantasy than an achievable reality. The Berra family was working class through and through. Young Lorenzo's father, Pietro, worked in a brick kiln. His mother, Paulina, struggled to keep the family fed and clothed. Like many immigrant families, every member had to contribute. Lorenzo left school after 8th grade and worked in a coal yard, drove a delivery truck, and pulled tacks in a shoe factory. The work was hard, the pay was little, but it was honest work that taught him the value of determination. But here's where the story takes its first magical turn. The Hill wasn't just any neighborhood. It was a baseball breeding ground. Lorenzo grew up on Elizabeth Avenue, directly across the street from his lifelong friend, Joe Garagiola, who would also become a major league player and famous broadcaster. That single block would later be named Hall of Fame Place because it produced not just 2 Hall of Famers, but also legendary broadcaster Jack Buck. Think about that. One street in a working-class neighborhood somehow produced multiple baseball legends. But how did Lorenzo become Yogi? The nickname came from his childhood days, when local kids thought he resembled a Hindu yogi as he sat cross-legged waiting for his turn to bat. The name stuck, and soon everyone forgot that the future Yankees legend was actually named Lorenzo. Even then, there was something different about the way this kid approached the game. While other children played, Yogi studied. He watched how pitchers moved, how batters reacted, how the game flowed. Without knowing it, he was developing the baseball intelligence that would make him legendary. By the time he was a teenager, Yogi was already making waves in local leagues. His squat build and powerful swing caught the attention of scouts, but it was his intelligence behind the plate that truly set him apart. In 1943, at just 18 years old, he signed with the New York Yankees for a $500 bonus. $500. That's what it cost to acquire one of the biggest winners in baseball history. But before he could begin his professional career, World War II intervened. Like many young men of his generation, Yogi served his country with distinction, participating in the D-Day invasion at Omaha Beach as a gunner's mate on a Navy rocket boat. Picture this. While his future teammates were playing baseball, Yogi Berra was storming the beaches of Normandy, facing down Nazi machine guns. The experiences of war shaped his character and gave him a perspective on pressure that would serve him well in the cauldron of professional baseball. When you've been under fire at D-Day, a bases-loaded situation in the World Series doesn't seem quite so intimidating. When Berra returned from the war in 1946, he was ready to begin his professional baseball journey. His debut with the Yankees was anything but smooth. Manager Casey Stengel, who would later become one of Berra's biggest supporters, initially wasn't sure what to make of the stocky catcher from St. Louis. Yogi's swing was unorthodox, his appearance was unconventional, and his way of speaking was, well, unique. But it didn't take long for him to prove he belonged in the big leagues. His first full season in 1947 saw him catch 140 games and help lead the Yankees to their first of what would be many World Series championships during his career.
He slides Veranka's pitch over the scoreboard in right field for the first pinch-hit home run in World Series history.
That 1947 World Series victory was just the beginning. What made Yogi special wasn't just his hitting ability, though he would finish with 358 career home runs. It was his incredible baseball IQ and his supernatural ability to perform when the stakes were the highest. The late 1940s and early 1950s were when Yogi Berra transformed from a promising young catcher into one of baseball's most dominant forces. In 1951, he won his first American League MVP award, batting .294 with 27 home runs and 88 RBIs while leading the Yankees to another World Series title. But that was just a warm-up act. His 1954 MVP season was even more spectacular. .307 with 22 home runs and 125 RBIs. Numbers that didn't even begin to capture his true value to the team. Here's where the Yogi Berra story becomes almost unbelievable. From 1947 to 1962, the Yankees appeared in 14 World Series and won 10 of them. Yogi Berra was the common denominator in every single one of those championship teams. Think about that level of sustained excellence. For 16 years, he was the backbone of the greatest dynasty in American sports history. But statistics alone don't tell the story of Yogi Berra's greatness. What made him legendary was his supernatural ability to rise to the occasion when everything was on the line. The bigger the moment, the better Yogi performed. His teammates knew it, his opponents feared it, and the fans came to expect it. When the Yankees needed a clutch hit, a stolen base, or a perfect game call, they turned to number 8. The numbers are simply staggering when you really break them down. Berra appeared as a player, coach, or manager in 13 of the 15 World Series that New York baseball teams won from 1947 through 1981. Overall, he played or coached in 21 World Series, winning 13 of them. To put that in perspective, the entire Boston Red Sox franchise has only appeared in 13 World Series in their 123-year history. Yogi Berra personally appeared in 21 of them. October 8, 1956, Game 5 of the World Series at Yankee Stadium. The Yankees are facing the Brooklyn Dodgers in what would become one of the most memorable World Series in baseball history. Don Larsen takes the mound for New York, and behind the plate, calling every pitch, is Yogi Berra. What happened next was pure magic. Inning after inning, Larsen retired every Dodgers batter who stepped to the plate. No walks, no hits, no errors. By the 7th inning, the crowd realized they were witnessing something special. By the 8th, the tension was suffocating. And then, in the 9th inning, with 2 outs and the entire baseball world holding its breath, Larsen struck out Dale Mitchell on a called 3rd strike. The next image is burned into baseball history forever. Yogi Berra, the squat catcher from the hill, sprinting toward the mound and leaping into Larsen's arms. The only perfect game in World Series history. And Yogi Berra was behind the plate calling every single pitch. It was the perfect metaphor for his entire career. When history was made, Yogi was somehow always right there in the middle of it. But here's what makes that moment even more remarkable. Yogi wasn't just lucky to be there. His game calling, his knowledge of the Dodgers hitters, his ability to keep Larsen calm and focused all of that contributed to the perfect game. Whitey Ford, the Yankees' Hall of Fame pitcher, once said that Yogi made him a better pitcher just by being behind the plate. On October 8, 1956, he made Don Larson perfect. What made Berra so special as a catcher went far beyond his defensive skills, though he was excellent at framing pitches and controlling the run game. It was his ability to get the best out of his pitchers through a combination of intelligence, psychology, and that indefinable quality we call leadership. He didn't just call pitches. He orchestrated entire games like a conductor leading a symphony. But Yogi wasn't just a defensive specialist. He was a feared hitter who could drive in runs from anywhere in the lineup. His approach at the plate was as unconventional as everything else about him. He swung at bad pitches and somehow got hits. He had a compact swing that generated surprising power from his 5'7" frame, and he was nearly impossible to strike out, finishing his career with just 414 strikeouts in over 8,000 plate appearances. For context, modern players often strike out 150 plus times in a single season. Here's the beautiful irony of Yogi Berra's career. While he became famous for his malapropisms and seemingly confused statements, he was actually one of the smartest players in baseball history. Those Yogi-isms, phrases like, "It ain't over till it's over," "When you come to a fork in the road, take it," and "It's like deja vu all over again," weren't the ramblings of a confused man. They were the observations of a baseball genius who saw the game differently than everyone else. The Yankees dynasty of the 1950s and early 1960s was built around several future Hall of Famers. Mickey Mantle had the power. Whitey Ford had the pitching mastery. But Yogi Berra had something more valuable. He had the heart. He was the player his teammates looked to when the pressure was highest, and he rarely disappointed them. When the game was on the line, when the season was hanging in the balance, when history was waiting to be made, Yogi Berra found a way to deliver. When Yogi hung up his spikes for good after the 1965 season, his resume was already the stuff of legend. 18-time All-Star, 3-time American League MVP, and 10-time World Series champion as a player. But for most athletes, that would be the end of the story. For Yogi Berra, it was just the beginning of the next chapter. His transition into coaching and managing proved that his baseball acumen extended far beyond his playing ability. In 1964, as a first-year manager, he led the Yankees to the World Series, coming within one game of another championship. Think about that. In his very first season as a manager, he nearly won it all. Later, he managed the New York Mets to the 1973 World Series, proving that his leadership skills transcended team loyalties and league boundaries. Here's where the numbers become truly mind-boggling. When you combine his playing, coaching, and managing career, Yogi Berra participated in 21 World Series and won 13 championship rings. 21 World Series appearances. Some of the most successful franchises in baseball history haven't appeared in that many World Series in their entire existence. But the numbers, as impressive as they are, only tell part of the story. Yogi Berra became something more than a baseball player. He became a cultural icon. His Yogi-isms entered the American lexicon. Politicians quoted him, comedians impersonated him, and fans cherished him. He proved that you could be both a fierce competitor and a beloved figure, that you could be both incredibly successful and genuinely humble. In 1972, Yogi Berra was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in his second year of eligibility. The voting wasn't even close. When your resume includes 10 World Series championships, 3 MVP awards, and 18 All-Star selections, there's really no debate about your worthiness. But even after his Hall of Fame induction, Yogi continued to be involved in baseball, serving as a coach and sharing his knowledge with new generations of players. When he passed away on September 22, 2015, at the age of 90, it felt like the end of an era. The tributes poured in from around the world. Yogi Berra's legacy transcends baseball, said one official statement, and they were absolutely right. Yogi had become larger than the game itself, a figure who represented the best of American values: humility, perseverance, and the ability to find joy in life's simple pleasures. But what made Yogi Berra truly special? Was it the 10 World Series championships? The 3 MVP awards? The perfect game he caught? The quotes that would become part of our language? The answer is all of the above, but it's also something more profound. Yogi Berra represented the possibility of greatness in the most unlikely packages. He showed us that you don't have to be the biggest, the fastest, or the strongest to be the best. You just have to be the wisest, the most determined, and the most willing to do whatever it takes to win. In an age of analytics and advanced statistics, Yogi Berra's career stands as a reminder that some things can't be measured by numbers alone. Yes, his statistics are incredible, but they don't capture his leadership, his clutch gene, or his ability to make everyone around him better. They don't measure the way he could calm a nervous pitcher with a joke or fire up a team with his presence. They don't quantify the magic that happened when he stepped into the batter's box with the game on the line. When you think about the greatest winners in sports history, certain names immediately come to mind. Michael Jordan won 6 NBA championships. Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. Bill Russell won 11 NBA titles. But Yogi Berra, he won 10 World Series as a player and appeared in 21 total as a player, coach, and manager. In the ultimate team sport, no individual has ever dominated like Yogi Berra dominated baseball. The kid from the Hill in St. Louis, who left school after 8th grade to work in a coal yard, became the most successful player in the history of America's pastime. He proved that in America, anything's possible if you're willing to work for it, if you're willing to be smart about it, and if you're willing to put the team first. Here's the thing that makes Yogi Berra's story so remarkable. In today's game, no player will ever have the opportunity to appear in 21 World Series. Free agency, expanded playoffs, increased parity. The modern game simply doesn't allow for the kind of sustained dominance that Yogi achieved. He didn't just set records. He set records that will never be broken. Lawrence Peter Yogi Berra, a 19-year playing career that produced more championships than any other player in history. A personality that transcended sports and became part of American culture. A legacy that will never be matched because, as Yogi himself might say, the future ain't what it used to be. So the next time someone asks you about the greatest winner in sports history, remember the squat catcher from St. Louis who somehow found a way to be in the right place at the right time over and over again for more than 2 decades. Remember the man who proved that it really ain't over till it's over, and that when you come to a fork in the road, sometimes the best choice is to take it. Remember Yogi Berra, baseball's greatest winner and one of America's most beloved champions. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video and comment to let us know who you want to hear about next. Subscribe for more legendary baseball stories every week. This is Inside Baseball, where we bring you the best of the game, one story at a time.